These are the 4.6 notes for trig. The essential question for today, how do I solve side-side angle triangles using law of sines? So we have kind of something that happens when you have a side-side angle triangle. You have three things that could potentially happen. So let's say you're setting up a tent and you have the ground right here. And then you're trying to put the side of the tent up. And then the tent pole in the middle is what's going to hold your tent in place. So sometimes that pole is exactly the right length to create the tent shape that you want. Other times, however, if you look at this no triangle one, you have the ground, you have the side of the tent, but then the tent pole is too short. So if you stuck that into the ground, you wouldn't be able to walk underneath into your tent. In that case, it creates no triangle. First case, it creates one triangle. Then you have this third option. Sometimes the tent pole is too long. So you have the ground here, you have the side of the tent, and then instead of shoving the pole that's too long directly into the ground like you see here with the dashed line, you can do two things. You can either tilt it to the right to make it shorter, or you can tilt it to the left. So you can tilt it this way, and you can see that you have then this triangle in pink, or you can tilt it the other way, which then you can see you have this triangle in purple. It's a little bit bigger of a triangle in purple. So in that case, you create two triangles. So this could possibly happen when you have side-side angle, two sides and an angle. Let's take a look at this first problem. Example 1, solve each triangle, round to the nearest tenth. So we'll put our information in where it goes. And then our job is to find B. We'll use the law of sines. And when I set this up, I'm going to cross multiply and divide. So I'm going to take 25, times it by the sine of 63, divided by the 18. So cross multiply and divide, just like we've done before. At the end of that, you'll have this sign that you need to get rid of because you want the b by itself. So then you'll need to inverse sine of the answer. Now there's an answer button that'll copy paste the answer that we got into our calculator for us. So first thing, make sure your calculator is on degree mode. So go to mode, degree right there. And you can see up at the top right here, it's in degree mode. And so then we're ready to type in 25 times the sine of 63. Make sure you close the parenthesis. Make sure you close the parenthesis. And then divide by 18. And then I'm going to inverse sine that number. And again, instead of having to type it all in, second sine. And then we want to copy this over. So I'm going to hit second. And then right here on the negative sign, you see this ANS. That's going to copy down that 1.237509061 for us. A copy paste. And then hit enter. If you get an error, that means that you have no triangle. So that means you have the second case right here, no triangle. You won't be able to get an answer. These are actually nice because the problems are super short. So just come down here, error message means no triangle. And so after that, there's nothing else to do because you cannot find one of these angles because there is no triangle. So that problem is done. All right, example number 2. Put our numbers into the correct place, 98, 39, 22. And set it up the same way. We'll start by finding, I'm going to switch colors. We're going to find B. All right. So the sine of 98 degrees over 39, sine of B over 22. So I will cross multiply and then divide by the 39, and then I will have to inverse sign. So let's type that in the calculator. All right, 22 times the sine of 98, close the parenthesis, divided by 39. Cross multiply and divide. Then make sure you take the inverse sign of the answer of the decimal that you got. So second sign, second answer. If you don't like using the answer button, you could just type out 0.5586, etc. And then hit enter. We get 33.959. Let's go ahead and round that up to 34. So I've got 34 degrees for B. That's the first answer that I get. Then what we need to do, so right now we know we have at least one triangle because we found an answer. Potentially that means if you have one triangle, you might have two. So at this point, we're going to come over to this second triangle. We're going to place the numbers that were given to us here into these spots as well. Then here's how you check for your second triangle. You take 180 degrees. You subtract out this first answer that you got, the B, and that's going to get us what I'm calling the other B, so the B for this possible second triangle. I'm going to do this on the side instead of pulling up the calculator screen. 180 minus 34 gets me 146, and I'll put that right here. Now, I don't know if I have a second triangle yet. What I need to do is actually try to find that last angle C. So to do that, we would do 180 minus the A that I know, minus the B that I know. Let's see what that gets me. When you subtract those from 180, you actually get negative 64. We are not allowed to have negative angles in a triangle. So when this happens here, it means there is no second triangle. You still have the first triangle over on the left that we're going to be able to finish, but you don't have a second one. So it's almost like you can just scratch that out. All right, so then we'll make our way back to our first triangle, our only triangle, and we'll finish up from here. I'm going to next find C, angle C. $180 minus 98 minus 34. That gets us 48 degrees. And that's not a negative number, so I know I'm good. 48 degrees right there. All right, one last step is to find lowercase c, side C. I always like to use, like we said, the numbers that were given to me. So I'm rather going to use the 9839 pair as opposed to this 3422. I like to use the numbers as best as possible what was given to me. We'll cross multiply and divide. This time we have to cross the other direction. You don't want to cross multiply with an unknown. So just make sure you cross multiply with numbers that you know. And then go ahead and divide that way. So 39 times the sine of 48 divided by the sine of 98. That gets us an answer of 29.3. We don't need to inverse sign because you don't have sign next to the C. If you're just trying to find a side, you're done. Only if you have that sign in front, like we did over here, that's when you have to inverse. This one doesn't have that. So you have your final answer, 29.3. So maybe you want to make a little note at the top of your paper. So you only want to inverse sign if you're trying to find an angle A, B, or C. All right. Example number 3. Let's put the numbers in where they belong. 72, 21 for the side of the triangle, 22 for the other side of the triangle. And our first step, we're going to start to find angle B. And again, because we are trying to find one of those angles, you have the sign B right there. You are going to need to inverse at the end. So we are going to cross multiply the two that we know and divide by the other one. Into your calculator, type 22 times the sine of 72 divided by 21. Then make sure you inverse sign the answer. We'll do that one more time for you on the calculator so you can see it. Still in degree mode. 22 times the sine of 72, close the parenthesis, divided by 21. Once you get that, inverse sign, so second sign. There's a sign to the -1, and then second answer button. Copy paste that 0.9963, etc. And we get 85.0997. Because that is so close to 85, I'm just going to go ahead and round that to 85. Just leave it as a whole number. I know technically you could go to 85.1 if you wanted to. Then as soon as you find that answer, you come over to the check for the second triangle. Put in the same 3 pieces of information that were given to you. And then to check for the second triangle, you do 180 minus the B, the 85. And that's going to give you potentially the other B. Subtract that in your calculator. 180 minus 85. That gets you 95 degrees. Again, we still don't know if we have that second triangle. We have to go find that last angle. You do 180 minus 95 minus 72. That gets us 13 degrees. And so because I get a positive number, 13, I do know that I have a second triangle, which means I'm going to go ahead and finish this one to get all 3 answers. Last thing I'll have to do, find A. Cross multiply and divide. Again, cross multiply the ones you know, so never cross multiply with a letter. Cross multiply the opposite angle, the opposite direction, and then divide. I'll let you type that into your calculator. All right, we should get, when you typed that in, lowercase a gives you rounded to 5. So you do have a second triangle. Oops, there we go. And that one's completely solved for. We have all of our numbers here in purple. That represents one triangle. Maybe that's if you tilted the tent pole to the right. And the one we have over here is if you tilted it just to the left. So we do need to finish this one on the this first triangle that we started, we're going to find A, 180, minus the two angles that we know. It's going to get us 23 degrees. Put that up here. And then very last part, find side A. I'm going to use the 72 and the 21. All right, and type this into your calculator, 21 times the sine of 23 divided by sine of 72. All right. Calculator should have given you about 8.6 if we round. So you can see that is according to the amount of work, 2 triangles is the situation where you're going to have the most amount of work because you're literally solving for 2 full triangles. Let's do one more example, number 4. Put the numbers in. And of course, we'll have to start by finding B, angle B. Sine of B over 2. Sine of 50 over 1. Cross multiply. 2 times the sine of 50 divided by 1. Then make sure you get rid of that sign by sine inversing the answer. All right, let's type this into the calculator. Close parenthesis. Then we need to inverse sine. Second sign, second answer. And we get another error message. So when you get an error message, remember on this type of problem, it means that you have no triangle. And you can see compared to one we just did that the no triangle is significantly shorter than having to find all the answers for 2 triangles.